Who's in? That is the question we're going to be asking ourselves for about the next 3 weeks. You know, guys, there are a lot of different playoff scenarios, some more likely than others, but there's a lot of different ways that any of these 7 teams up here can find themselves in the Final Four. A lot of different combinations. And today, guys, we're here to kind of preview these 7 teams who do all have a legitimate shot of making the college football playoff, and also taking a look at 2 very possible scenarios that could be what your playoff looks like come Selection Sunday. And we have a lot of football left to be played. 3 full weekends left that are going to drastically shape the playoff slate, drastically shape the playoff rankings. But we want to break this down now, and of course we'll be doing this just about every other week up until Selection Sunday. So let's go ahead and dive in, guys, to what we're looking at here. Very brief. These are your top 7 teams. All have a legitimate shot at making the playoff. If the playoff were to end right now, or begin right now, I should say, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, TCU, those would be your top 4 teams. Your top 4 teams now, and if the playoff were to start right now, that's who would be in. But obviously a lot is going to change. Michigan still has to play Ohio State. One of those teams is going to lose, not this week, but the next week. Georgia still has a huge game against LSU. I will say this, though. Georgia is a lock for the college football playoff unless they somehow slip up to Kentucky or Georgia Tech. If they lose that, things get interesting. But more than likely, Georgia's not going to lose one of those games. So even if Georgia lost to LSU in the SEC championship game, the Bulldogs would still get in. It's the exact same scenario we saw last year. Georgia was undefeated. They fell to Alabama in the SEC championship. The Bulldogs still got in, still ended up winning the national championship. As long as Georgia doesn't slip up in the regular season, the Bulldogs are in. So we're going to count them as a lock for right now. Georgia's in, but if LSU were to win out, including that win over Georgia, they would have a legitimate shot of getting in as the first 2-loss team into the college football playoff. USC, some people don't think is getting enough respect. They're at number 7 right now, have an opportunity to win out over 3 straight ranked opponents against UCLA, Notre Dame, and then whoever they play in the Pac-12 championship. Could be Utah again, could be Oregon again. That'd be 3 straight wins over ranked opponents and would give USC a bunch of leverage, but the Trojans are going to need some help. They're going to need some help. So we're breaking down 2 potential scenarios here, guys. And again, there are countless others that we're not even talking about right now. These will fluctuate, obviously, based on the results over the next few weeks. But these are 2 very possible scenarios that we just kind of want to get your thoughts on and to break down what the committee could be dealing with on Selection Sunday. If you look over here on the left, this is scenario number 1. And here's what we think could happen. Georgia wins out, including an SEC title over LSU. So that eliminates LSU from the discussion. They're done. Georgia would get the number 1 seed. No doubt about it. Ohio State beat Michigan, and we believe that Ohio State, as of now, will beat Michigan. The game is in Columbus. We have a lot of faith in the Buckeyes. Let's say they win the game and then go on to win the Big Ten championship over whoever it may be. Could be Illinois, could be Purdue, could be Minnesota. Regardless, Ohio State or Michigan, whoever wins the Big Ten East is significantly better than that of the West representative. But for the sake of the argument, we're saying it's Ohio State. So Ohio State gets the 2 seed. So Georgia's in, Ohio State's in, done. Let's say TCU wins out. TCU wins out. They beat Baylor on the road this week. They beat Iowa State, and they win the Big 12 championship, let's say over Kansas State. Doesn't really matter who they play. As long as TCU wins out and finishes undefeated, the Horned Frogs are in. If TCU loses just 1 game, whether it's to Baylor, I don't think they're going to lose to Iowa State, or the Big 12 championship, the Horned Frogs are out. They are holding on. TCU right now reminds me a lot of Wisconsin from a few years ago. You look at that Wisconsin team, guys. They ran the table in the regular season, undefeated. Were playing great ball. They lost by 6 to Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game and did not make the college football playoff. And I think that's what's going to happen to TCU. If TCU loses a game, the Horned Frogs will not be in the college football playoff. But in this argument here, TCU wins out. They are in. They are in. Then it comes down to that final spot. And here's who's at risk here, right? You have an 11-1 Tennessee team whose only loss was to Georgia. You have an 11-1 Michigan team who did not play for the Big Ten championship. Their only loss to Ohio State. And you have, let's say, a 12-1 USC Pac-12 champion who won 3 straight games over ranked opponents to end the year. Only lost to Utah. Who gets into that 4th spot? Do they give the edge to Tennessee? Do they give the edge to Michigan? Neither of which won their conference or even played for their conference championship, but had quality losses. Or do you give the edge to USC, who did win their conference, but the strength of schedule not nearly as good as Tennessee's or Michigan's? Now, you look at the rankings here, guys. If USC does win out over UCLA, Notre Dame, and whoever they play, the Trojans would finish the year with 4 wins over currently ranked college football playoff teams. 4 wins over currently ranked playoff teams. Tennessee would have 2. Michigan would have 1. In this scenario, though, guys, I do believe that Tennessee gets in. Clearly, the committee, based on these rankings here, having Tennessee at 5 and USC at 7, likes Tennessee more than the Trojans. They each only have 1 loss. Tennessee's to Georgia, USC to Utah. They still like the Volunteers. It would be very hard to not put Tennessee in that Final Four. Even though USC would win the conference, it'd be very hard to leave Tennessee out, solely based on what they've already stated. They believe they're already 2 spots better than USC, despite each only having 1 loss. So that's scenario number 1. And in this scenario here, I do believe that Tennessee does get in. And so we would finally get the rematch at a neutral site. Some people think that make a difference between Georgia and Tennessee, and then Ohio State would play TCU. That's your playoff. Scenario number 2 over here, same thing. Georgia wins out. They beat LSU. They're in. Ohio State beats Michigan, wins the Big Ten. They're in. That seems like the easiest course. It almost not locks. Anything can happen, but I think a lot of people feel very confident about Georgia and Ohio State making the college football playoff and both coming in at number 1, number 2. Here's where things can get very interesting. Georgia beats LSU. LSU's out. Ohio State beats Michigan. Michigan's holding on. TCU loses a game. They either lose to Baylor, Iowa State, or lose in the Big 12 championship. So TCU drops the game. They're out. So they're out. They're out. You now have a 3-team race between an 11-1 Tennessee team, an 11-1 Michigan team, neither of which won their conference, neither played for it, but it's both very dang good football teams, and then a 12-1 USC team who won the Pac-12 championship, has 4 currently ranked wins over teams in the playoff rankings, including a win over UCLA, Notre Dame, and let's say Oregon. That's how the Trojans would finish out their year. Who gets in? You now have 3 teams vying for 2 spots. Someone's getting left out. Does the committee, and really the interesting thing to me is Michigan. Michigan is the caveat here. Does Michigan get in? Clearly the committee really likes Tennessee, and Tennessee in this scenario is going to get in. Just like in this scenario. I believe the Volunteers are almost a lock at this point. Unless something drastically crazy changes, I think Tennessee is getting in. They win out, they're probably getting in. Should get in. So Tennessee gets that spot. Clearly, they like them above more than USC, so they're definitely in. So then it comes down really more than anything to Michigan or USC. Do they value a conference championship over for USC? They value that conference championship for USC. They value the way the Trojans finish. Do they look at it and say, yeah, their only loss was on the road to a good Utah team who they beat by 1? And actually, if you're USC, you're hoping that you get to play Utah again. To me, that would make a better statement to the committee. It would say, we were able to beat Utah and get our revenge. We lost them by 1 point in Salt Lake City. Give us a second chance on a neutral site. If we beat them, it shows that we can do it. If you're USC, you need to be rooting for Utah to play them in the Pac-12 championship. So ultimately, it comes down to 12-1 USC Pac-12 champion, 11-1 Michigan, who's been dominant all year but couldn't win in Columbus. Who does the committee put in? I think they put in USC. I think they put in USC. I think they're going to look at the strength of schedule and Michigan and USC and goes, honestly, neither's been that strong. Michigan would only have 1 currently ranked win. And that would be Penn State, who they dominated. USC would have finished with 3 straight ranked wins. I think they're going to look at the most recent victories. I think they're going to look at how the team finished. And I think they're going to weigh that conference championship a little bit more. And I think USC would get in that scenario over Michigan. Tennessee's in a good spot. I believe the Trojans get in over the Wolverines. It would be Georgia versus USC, Ohio State, Tennessee. Talk about a great offensive matchup with the Buckeyes and the Volunteers. That is scenario number 2. A lot of possibilities, guys. These are just 2. Obviously, this would drastically change. Michigan could beat Ohio State. USC could lose, take themselves out of the running. I mean, so many different things. LSU could beat Georgia, and then you're talking about LSU. And we're going to break down more scenarios in the coming weeks, 100%. We'll do it on our lives. We'll do it on individual videos like we did today. But these are 2 very, very possible scenarios here for the college football playoff that we need to keep in mind as we go forward. Again, only 3 weekends left of college football before Selection Sunday. Get ready, guys, because I have a feeling we're going to be in for a very controversial Selection Sunday and a Selection Sunday full of chaos. So once again, guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos. Leave your predictions down in the description below. Who do you think gets in these scenarios? Leave your playoff picks as we head into week 12 of this season. Make sure, again, guys, check out everything down in the description below, including those expert picks. Check out everything on our website, thegridironexpert.com. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.